MATCO Tools 3/8 inch long reach ratchet. Is it something that needs to go in your toolbox? Come back and find out. I'm Tim Johnson. You're watching Shop Tool Reviews. This is the MATCO MCL1638LR, and the LR stands for long reach. Long reach ratchet. That's what it is. 3/8 drive, long reach ratchet. This is supposed to have 35 foot-pounds of force. If you've ever watched any of my videos on cordless ratchets, I really don't put a lot of value on that because I see it as more of a nut running device and less of a impact or an impact wrench. Impact wrenches are for hitting hard and releasing fasteners. Nut running devices, ratchets, things like that, I see as something as just running the bolts on and off. Now, yes, I want it to have enough power to run it off the threads, but I'm not looking for it to break free 100 foot-pounds. Now, what I do want in it is the ability for me to put a lot of manual force against it to break that fastener free. That's very important to me. Let's take a closer look at the features on this. We'll use it in some testing and then we'll come back and give you our opinion. So this is a little closer look at the MATCO Tools MCL1638LR. It's part of their Infinium series. The LR is for the long reach. So this is their long reach ratchet powered by their 16 volt batteries. With the kit, you get the two 16 volt batteries. I believe they're 2 amp hour batteries. And you get the charger, the case, and the actual long reach ratchet. Now this is a brushed motor in here. So it doesn't have a brushless motor. It has a brushed can motor, which is not the end of the world. It's not a problem per se. 310 RPMs. And you get a paddle switch. I love a paddle switch, whether it be on a grinder or a ratchet or cut off tools. I love to see a paddle switch. I can really grab this if I kind of hand forward here. I can still grab with my pinky. If I'm down here in the back, I can still grab with my index. It just gives me a lot of flexibility. Also, it's a variable speed trigger paddle. It's not a trigger, it's a paddle. It's variable speed, so you can see I can make this thing just about crawl. And the more I grab it, the more I put pressure on it, the faster I can make it go. So I love that variable speed design, especially in a paddle switch. Now you have an LED right here that will shine light on your work. And then you have a ratchet head here, which let's get some measurements on this. This is a pretty narrow tool at the head. Pretty impressed here. 1.2, about 1.25, so about 1.25 inches in width there. And then as far as depth, without the anvil, you're looking at right at 1 inch. And that's with the directional lever there. So really narrow, thin design on the head and all the way through this tool until you get back to the handle. And all this is metal through here. In fact, let's check to see. Yeah, that's definitely not aluminum. Not aluminum there either. That could be aluminum. I could be magnetizing to the can of the motor, but I don't think so. I think this is all metal. Regardless, this is not plastic through here. Until I get to here, then we have plastic here, but this is all metal, so it should be able to take a lot of the brunt. I mentioned 310 RPMs. Now, as far as how much force you can put on this tool, they say up to 100, I believe 155 foot-pounds of manual force you can put on this, which is nice to see. You definitely want to be able to add that additional torque than what the tool can put out. As far as the amount of torque the actual tool puts out, I believe it's 35 foot-pounds. That's not critical to me. I've said that many times when I'm looking at battery-powered or cordless ratchets. That's not. I don't see the need in a cordless ratchet for all the torque. I just see it as more of a nut runner. So I want the speed in there. I want to be able to put that back in a tight spot and run that nut on, run that nut off. I can break it free with manual force or tighten it to its final tightening with manual force, or even get a torque wrench when I need to. Now, as far as the battery gauge here, so I can press this button here and it has the battery gauge built on to the actual battery. This has got kind of one of those blister buttons. I'm not crazy about those. I'd rather see a true rubber button, or at least a rubber overmolded button. This is more of as I mentioned, a blister button, but it still should be fine. It's just kind of a pet peeve of mine. I don't like those little blister buttons, but it works fine. So we can definitely see the status of our battery. how much charge is left in it. You can get this in orange, green, and red. So we chose the orange, but you can choose the color of your choice. Okay, first thing we want to test, we're going to use our little torque meter here and be able to measure the foot-pounds that we input from the ratchet. So that's what we're going to do. We've got it zeroed out. I'm going to see if I can put 155. There, 160 foot-pounds of force on this. I'm really not feeling any flex through here whatsoever. I did feel a little back here when I got back here on the plastic, but up through here, through this main body here, I'm not feeling any flex whatsoever. So pretty impressive from a tool like this to be able to input 160 foot-pounds. Okay, we're going to take our fasteners here and we're going to torque them starting at 20 foot-pounds. Then we're going to go to 25. And then we're going to go to 30. And then 35. So 20, 25, 30, 35. And that's what it's rated for, but we'll keep going. We'll go up to 40 here. And then we'll go to 45. So we've got 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45 foot-pounds. Got a full battery here. Yep, full battery. 20 foot-pounds. 25 foot-pounds. 30 foot-pounds. Okay, so finally got it bumped. I'm trying not to put any input on it. So now we're at 40 foot-pounds. So right at 35 foot-pounds as expect. So we really don't expect to go any more than that. But with a little input, now we can back those off. So definitely looks like 35 is the max there. But as I mentioned when we were going over the features, in a tool like this, that's exactly what I see it used for. As long as it's got enough force to run it off the threads, I could care less how much torque it has. I really couldn't, because I'm using it as a nut runner device, not as an impact wrench. There are right angle impacts that can do that type of work. Now, yes, it needs to have enough force, as I mentioned, to at least be able to run it off the threads, but to be able to initially break those free, I really don't care. I can use that manual force, then lay into the button and be able to do the rest of my work. Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I am going to take and go to 25 foot-pounds. So what's that? Some intake manifold bolts maybe? Okay, I'm going to torque each one of these to 25 foot-pounds. So 25 foot-pounds on these first 5 or 6, and see if we can just, in repetition, be able to back those off. So. There we go. Now here on our cutaway truck, or our truck with a crushed front end, We can easily get to the front of this motor, but you could easily assume where the radiator would be that we would have to get down here, and this is a great spot for timing cover bolts, water pump bolts, what have you, be able to get to those fasteners and be able to run those out with that long reach ratchet. So it makes it very handy, or even on the back side, back on the bell housing, back on the rear of the valve cover, what have you, just less of a reach with your arm, less of crawling into the engine bay. You can actually use the length of that ratchet to reach those fasteners. Right out of the gate, I love the build quality on this. We've got metal from the head all the way down through mid-handle. So the steel, the metal doesn't stop here at the shaft. It continues on through the handle. And then the back side of the handle is where you get into some plastic. But for this upper portion and through the motor and everything else, there's all metal. So you don't feel any flex in here, hardly any. Again, when I was torquing this down to I believe we got to 160 foot-pounds of manual input on this. Once I put my hand here on the back of it, I felt a little flex through the plastic, but as long as I was up here, I felt zero flex in it. So that tells me it should be a more durable tool. Now, also, as I mentioned, this is a brushed model. It's a brushed motor. It's not a brushless motor. It means it's not going to be quite as efficient on batteries as a brushless model would be. It also means it's probably a little less power as size per se than a brushless motor. That's not a big deal to me. Again, if it can accomplish the task it needs to do and do it with a brushed motor, hey, that's absolutely fine. Now, price-wise, you're looking at $500 for this kit. So 2 2-amp-hour batteries, the charger, and the long reach ratchet, well, and the beautiful case, all that for about $500. Now, warranty on this is 2 years. I believe it's 2 years on the battery as well as 2 years on the tool. So they are covering this for a little bit of time, not just a 90-day or 1-year term. So you get a full 2-year warranty on this. But price-wise, that is pretty steep. Now, for a long reach ratchet, you don't have a lot of choices, and we believe it does quite well on that. It did exactly what it was supposed to do when we were looking at the torque readings. In other words, we torqued fasteners down to 35 foot-pounds. It broke those free. Had trouble a little beyond that, and even some in repetition as well. But still, we believe it did what they said it. But we still believe that it does what they say it will do. Now, also, when they're saying 35 foot-pounds, we're seeing that as what you would consider nut busting force. In other words, we tighten the fastener to 35 foot-pounds and it would break it free. I don't believe that it's actually applying 35 foot-pounds of force. Again, that's a whole nother science. Anyway, the MATCO Tools Long Reach Ratchet, hey, this is a nice setup. Can't complain at all. Also, one other note. When you look at 16-volt batteries, understand that's the same kind of marketing spiel as we see with 18 and 20-volt batteries. It's not a bad thing, but you see 14-4s and 16-volt. They're the same number of cells batteries. In other words, this 16-volt battery, after it's used a little bit, if you take a reading on it, you're going to measure about 14.4 volts because each one of the cells are 3.6 volts. You multiply that, you get 14.4. However, when you charge it to the max, that's where you'll get 16 volts. The same when you see on, say, a DeWalt 20-volt battery. After it's used a little bit, you'll see an 18-volt battery. But when it's charged all the way up, you can put your multi-tool in there and read 20 volts. Check it out for yourself. Again, it's the MATCO Tools MCL1638LR. If you wouldn't mind, would you also keep track of us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter? And would you hit that like and subscribe button, but only if you liked our video. If you hated our video, by all means, give us that thumbs down. But would you let us know in the comments why? Have a great day and keep smiling.